Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome in from across the continent. I've got to say, Mrs. Fisher's class, you guys went absolutely crazy during that countdown. So well done for losing your minds for conservation and beyond. My name is Jesse. I'm here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And if you're new to us, like so many of you are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And you're catching us on a very exciting day because all year long, we partner with amazing conservation organizations at the IUCN. We feature a lot of Reverse the Red programs about bringing species back from the brink. But you are smack dab in the middle with us in our amazing National Wildlife Week series with the amazing folks at the Canadian Wildlife Federation. So last year, we did 5 incredible programs this week to feature all sorts of incredible stories of conservation coast to coast to coast across Canada. I've got a frog in my throat. That's not a creature we're conserving. The throat frogs are a separate thing entirely. Now, this week, we have featured already the amazing pronghorn in Grasslands National Park and beyond with John Wilmshurst yesterday. Nicholas Lapointe talked about salmon in our first broadcast, and you are catching us right in the middle for an epic program on hummingbirds, one of our first ever on these charismatic and amazing little birds. Now, before I turn you over to Sarah to blow your mind with all the cool stuff hummingbirds get up to, I do want to note we do have a Kahoot today. So I'm going to bring up this game pin now. If you want to pull up a separate tab and pull this up in about 25 minutes or so, we're going to play a little 4-question quiz to test your understanding and have a little bit of fun. But without further ado, we're joined by Sarah Coulber at the Canadian Wildlife Federation to tell us a little bit about these incredible birds. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the broadcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here with all of you to talk about these really cool creatures. So I'm going to now share my screen. Can you see that okay,
You are
Jesse?
perfect. It couldn't be better if it tried.
Perfect. Okay, so hummingbirds. Let's just talk about hummingbirds. So a little bit first about the Canadian Wildlife Federation. I'm going to share with you some great identification tips to help you spot and notice birds in your area, in your garden, in your schoolyard, on the trail, etc. Learn a little bit about our hummingbird species, talk about how they live, and simple ways you can help them, as we can all make a big difference. So the Canadian Wildlife Federation, we are a national organization, which means we are coast to coast of the country. We're a charitable organization, which means we're here just to do good. And we've been around since the 1960s, so that's a long time. And our mission is to conserve and inspire the conservation of Canada's wildlife and habitats for the use and enjoyment of all. And we do this with education programs, kind of like today. We have all kinds of research we conduct and conservation projects with like turtles and eels and whales, working with fishermen and pollinators and working with rights of way managers. And of course, working with those that make decisions to influence things across the country. So I just want to talk a little bit about bird identification tips, because it's all very well to learn about the birds, but isn't it cool when you get to see one in your space and you know a little bit about it, or you can have clues like a detective to figure out what it is. So I used to be a really big birder. I would walk around with binoculars a lot, but I've let go of that. But I just like to enjoy them, but I still like to know what birds are around me because it's fun. So look generally at the size and shape of the bird. Overall, is it really big like a hawk? Is it tiny like a chickadee? And same with the body parts, like the bill and the tail. Are they long? Are they small? Are they narrow? What's the shape? Is it rounded? Is it elongated? How about the colors and the marking? You might see maybe it's got like what looks like a stripe of color going through the eye area, above or below. Maybe it's got like a cap on its head. What color is the sort of the chest area and the back and the tails? Maybe its wing has a couple of lines we call wing bars, a couple of stripes. Behavior, gosh, is it maybe you're seeing it flying, and maybe it's flying in what we call undulated patterns, like a woodpecker. Maybe it's like a wren where the tail, it keeps flicking the tail. Even if you can't see the bird up close, just seeing some of these identification features will help you figure out, again, like a detective, who is that? What are we looking at? Sound, of course, can help to hear the calls that it's making, and the habitat, and where is it within the habitat. So perhaps you're in a marshy wetland area, perhaps you're in a forest. Is the bird perched on a cattail, in which case it could be a red-winged blackbird? Is it high up in the tree or low down on the ground? You get to know different patterns with the birds, and they're clues that you can then help to figure out, what did I see? And then you can discover other things after that. Now, specifically for hummingbirds, we'll often look at the males because they've got very bright color, and like a lot of male species do. And we're looking at the throat in particular, because the males have something called a gorget on their throat. And They are feathers that are iridescent, which means they don't always look that color. It depends if the light is shining on them. And if you're in front and you get to see the reflection, then you will get to see these beautiful colors. And if not, they might just simply appear dark. So that's a really good clue to figure out, what hummingbird am I seeing? What is the color of the throat? And is it solid, like you see in the picture here with these birds, or is it streaked? One of our hummingbird species has a streaked coloring on their neck. Is it the whole throat or just a part of it? One of our hummingbirds has like a band at the bottom, but the top part is just dark. And one of our hummingbirds also has the head colored, not just the throat. So there are little clues you can look for. Now, the females are very hard to tell apart. I'll tell you that now. They're typically like greenish on the back and grayish on the sides and whitish on the belly. They can be challenging to see, but there's one species that does sometimes you can see like a colored spot in the middle of the throat. But other than that, they're pretty hard to tell apart. And then you got to go by basically, where am I in the country, and other clues like that. Another thing to keep in mind is the young males. They go through different changes, and so you can't always tell what they are because they look very similar to females when they're young. But again, if you can get a few ideas of, get a sense of what they look like, then again, they're good clues to go off of. So other spotting tips are like, learn their habits and pay attention. Like, where are they? Are they near a certain plant in my garden? Oh, okay, I'm going to watch that plant again tomorrow. And maybe, if I can, I'll watch it at the same time of day, because some birds have patterns that they like to sort of get into habits of. And another great clue, which I will tell you has helped me so many times know that there's a hummingbird around me, is the sound they make when they fly past me or when they hover nearby. Because some birds with the big wings make a big flapping sound. And some birds, like the chickadees and the sparrows, make like a kind of a sound with their wings. But if you hear like a whoom, like a whirring sound, then that is a really good clue it's a hummingbird, because their wings are tiny and they beat so fast, it makes this whoom kind of a sound. And I'll be looking down at a plant or sitting in the garden, and all of a sudden I'll hear that sound and I'll go, oh, there's a hummingbird nearby. And I very slowly, carefully look around me, and then usually I'm able to spot it. If it's feeding at a plant and still enough for me to actually spot it, that is. So a question for you guys: how many hummingbird species are there in Canada?
Ooh. We can ask our audience. So guys, if you guys want to chime in the chat or live, what do we think? 2, 5, or 23 species? We got some teachers running up. We've got a few 5s coming in. We've got 123. We've got, okay. We got, so 5s and 23. No one says 2. So we think there's a few more species than that. Sarah, what's the deal?
Well, good thinking, guys, because there are 5 in Canada, and we're going to look at them all right now. So a lot of them are out west, and this one is the rufous hummingbird, and it gets its name because of the coloring. It's got a rufous color, which is sort of like an orangey, reddy brown color. And they're found throughout much of BC, part of Alberta near the Rockies, and even into the Yukon up north. And you can see, again, telling them apart, the gorget, the throat, when the sun hits it and you get to see the color, it's sort of an orangey red color. But even when you're not looking there and you're looking at the back and the belly and the sides, they've got an orangey brown color. So that's a really great way to tell. And I want to thank Cornell and eBird for allowing me to use their map, so you can see yourself also where they are in Canada and also where they migrate to. You can see way down how far they have to travel on that map. Anna's hummingbird is another one. So they're more in the southwest area of BC, Vancouver, Victoria Island. However, they have been spotted in the southern interior, and they have been spotted on the coastal area. So if you live there, you visit there, you've got family there, keep an eye out, because you never know, you might spot them in another spot nearby too. Anna's has pink coloring, and they're one of the ones with not just the throat, but also the head. So that's a really good one to keep an eye out. And the females can have a red spot in the center of the throat. The black-chinned is the one I was talking about, where it just has a part, like the lower part of the throat is shimmery and iridescent. That's purple. And then the top part is black. And they're kind of more, again, southern BC and more interior and towards the Rocky area, the Rockies. The Calliope hummingbird is the one that I was thinking of that has the streaking. It's got pink streaking on the throat, and they're kind of found throughout much of the interior of BC, going up fairly north in that province. Now, the ruby-throated hummingbird, which is one that's been spotlighted this week, is the hummingbird that goes throughout much of Canada. And ruby, you think, is like a red-pink color, and that's the color of their throat. Sometimes the name of the bird actually can give you clues as to what you're looking for when you're trying to spot it. And here's a picture of a hummingbird that was taken in an area where the annas are known to be, and it's got, again, detective, use the clues. It's got pinky color, it's on the throat, and it's on the head. So there's a very good chance it could be the anna's hummingbird. But always do some checking if you really want to be sure. So now we know a little bit about them. Why should we care about helping them? Well, they're our neighbors. They have every right to be here, and they're very important to our well-being. They're one of Canada's pollinators, but they're facing challenges. So there's a lot of development going on with habitat loss. So as we build shopping malls and stores and parking lots and even housing areas, we are losing that habitat. And oftentimes when we create spaces that are green, like in gardens, they're often just barren lawns with nothing more than a token tree and a token plant. And there's not much there for all our wildlife, including hummingbirds, to live in and within. So also keep in mind, pesticides are, some crops can be sprayed, our plants can be sprayed. That can often be very, very harmful to them and their food supply. And invasive plants. Invasive plants are plants that are not from that area. And not all plants that are not native are harmful, but some of them are invasive in that they can spread so quickly, they can go into natural areas, they can push out our native plants, which can be a real problem for a lot of our wildlife that really need that plant, etc. They have co-evolved together, these plants and animals, over thousands of years. So they have this very special relationship that we need to respect as we do our own human activities. So here's where we come in. We can make a big difference, positively affecting the world near and far, supporting the nature we love and need, all with very simple choices. So together, our gardens are connecting, creating these corridors with larger natural areas and each other, giving wildlife a place to live and travel along, including our hummingbirds. So this helps us too, because by helping them, we're getting their services. So pollinating plants is a huge one for our farms, for our gardens, for our natural spaces. Pest control is really important. And I've got quotations around the word pest because every creature has a role to play. It's just when things get out of balance and we have an excess of something that humans can decide it's a pest. So we can keep this in check by having our different pest control allies. And you can see here a bird getting a much needed caterpillar as food for their young. So that's, again, helping keep things in balance. They break down organic matter, release nutrients to the plants, and then our gardens become even more enhanced too by not using pesticides for wildlife-friendly gardening. They're safer for us and our pets, etc. They're more interesting to explore by having more habitat, more flowers, more plants, more visitors, etc. Nooks and crannies to go exploring in and discover. And the wild neighbors can be wonderful to listen to and watch. As you see there's a robin with its young, and they're quite lovely to see if you ever get the chance, all these different birds and their creatures. So then how do we do this then? How do we garden with wildlife in mind, including hummingbirds? Well, they're just like us. They need food, water, and shelter. And they, of course, once you have those habitat elements, it also has to be a safe place for them where they're not going to be poisoned. So no pesticides is a really big one. And in case you're wondering what's in that second picture of shelter, there's a teeny tiny little toad that I discovered in the moss below one of the plants in our gardens. I thought that would be cool to show. Okay, here's another question for you. True or false? Hummingbirds need insects and spiders for food.
What do we think? I will say too, by the way, this exact kind of question might come up in our Kahoot as well. So if you get it right now, keep that in mind for our mini quiz in the middle. What do we think? True or false? Are hummingbirds eating spiders, eating insects all the time? We've got false. Let's see what a lot of falses. I think a lot of people are on the ball with this one, Sarah.
Okay, well, I will share with you that it's true. Our hummingbirds, they get carbohydrates from flower nectar. They have to get that from flowers, but they also get protein from insects and spiders. So this is another really great reason not to spray your yard and the surrounding area, as that can kill pollinators and other insects that we need and that birds need for food, etc. So this is a really important one to remember. And most people don't even know this. So that's really, really cool. So again, about food, flowers are really important for them. A lot of tubular flowers, as you can see here, and insects and spiders, which I just mentioned. So that kind of helped with the pest control element. And they also eat tree sap, or drink tree sap, I should say. We have a kind of bird in Canada, and there are several species. They're called sapsuckers. And they'll go to certain trees, make holes, and then the sap from those trees will come out, it'll ooze out. And then after the sapsucker has had a fill or a drink, hummingbirds and even some butterflies will come along and drink what's dribbling out. So while we're talking about food, approximately how many insects can a nesting hummingbird catch in one day? And by nesting hummingbird, I mean an adult that is going and catching insects to feed the young in the nest, because they have young that they need to feed for a couple of weeks or several days. How many insects do they need to catch in one day?
Let's see, 30, 200, 2,000. What are your thoughts? You guys are such an on-the-ball audience. I love it. Let's see. All right, 2,000 is our water rockers answer. 30. So we've got the complete gamut. We've got from the tiniest to the highest. And then for good measure, a lot of 2,000s and then a 200. So every answer was picked.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, but amazingly enough, around 2,000 insects every day. So that is a lot of insects. So you can see why we need to have our gardens kept organically, because we need the insects for the birds in particular right now, the hummingbirds. So really, really neat. And then going back to plants again, for food, if you're planning on buying a plant and bringing it into your garden, try to avoid ones where the pollen and nectar producing abilities are lost through hybridizing and cultivation. And that they're basically fancy words for saying, we play with plants to get the favored characteristics we like. Maybe we like them to be extra showy with the petals. But a lot of flowers are very different. They've got very tiny, little inconspicuous, hard to see little tiny flowers in the center. And they're the ones that provide the food for these creatures. But if we replace them with the fancy, showy ones just to make it look pretty to us, well, then they're kind of sterile and they don't have food for the wildlife. So that's something to keep in mind. Not all of them are like that, but some of them are. So it's just good to ask questions and be thinking about that. Plants grown with neonicotinoids, and that's a mouthful. So you can call them neonics, as I do for short. Grown with them, they're a very harmful group of pesticides in particular, and they can stay with the plant the whole time. So the pollen, the nectar, and the seeds and fruit can harm pollinators and birds quite significantly. It can also kill them. Invasive plants from other places that I told you about, they can spread and wipe out native plants in the areas. So then what do you want to include? Try to get plants that bloom from early spring to late fall. You can see in the top left, that's an eastern wild columbine. That actually blooms typically around the time that the ruby-throated hummingbird has returned home from its migration. So these smart relationships, they are great to support in our gardens if we can. Have some regionally native plants. All these pictures here are native plants. They're beautiful. Have tubular-shaped flowers of all sizes. Most of them, one you're seeing here, are big. But the bottom right, they're actually very, very tiny flowers, but they're also tubular, and so they're perfect for hummingbirds. And typically they go to reds, oranges, pinks, and purples, but they will still also go to white and yellow. It's not the end of the world if you have them, so keep watching because you might see them. But typically they do go to the other colors a bit more often. Now, once you have natural habitat, then you can have a sugar water feeder if that's what you like. But it's really important not to do this instead of the natural food and the natural habitat, because these animals really do need to have what they've evolved to need. So if you do have a sugar water feeder, don't use dyes, don't make it colored red, don't use alternative sweeteners like honey, and clean it often. Clean it often, I guess I should say, also is because bacteria can grow and you don't want to make the birds sick. So we've done food, now water. So water can be a gently moving fountain or a mist, and it's important to keep the dishes clean. And there's an example of another bird with the streaking on the throat. So shelter's the third habitat element, and just like us, they need protection from the heat and the rain and the wind and predators, and places to nest and rest, and to perch and spy their next meal in the case of insects and spiders. So you see them here in a pine and a cedar tree. Okay, one more question for you. True or false? Hummingbirds use spider webs in making their nests. What do you think about that?
I love this question. This is a lot of fun. All right, we had spiders linked in another question already. So is our second spider question related in our hummingbird presentation, which is kind of fun. Our answers coming in. Okay, false. Oh, false. True are our first two on our StreamYard classes. You too. We got some false there. We got true. Again, you're stumping everybody, Sarah. This is fantastic.
Well, these are such tricky things. And as I discovered them, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I want to tell the world. So it's true. They can use spider webs in making their nests. So they make their nests in trees and shrubs and vines, and they use a variety of materials for those nests. So they'll use plant down on the inside. And if you're not sure what that means, when you think of a flower after it's been pollinated, it'll make a seed typically, and some seeds are attached to like white fluff, and that's designed so the wind can catch it and blow it away, and it can land somewhere else and grow somewhere else, so it helps the plant spread. So plants like our native cattails, we do have native thistles, fireweed, milkweed, they have down, which can be useful for hummingbirds and other birds as well. They might use small, soft feathers, moss, insect cocoons even, and they're often held together with spider webs. And you can see on the outside, looks like the nest is really blending in well. They often use lichen and bark on the outside. And again, we often, for crafts, we'll do something fun and make a bird house rather, and paint it bright colors. And that's fun if it's a craft. But if you're actually wanting to make it work and be a real help to birds, if that's your goal, you want it to blend in, because the more it blends in, the less a predator might spot it and go and attack the nest. So because we don't often get to see nests up close, and I was seeing such beautiful images, I wanted to share these with you because you get to see the nests a little bit more, and you can spot some of those materials I was talking about. And then look, this female, I can tell she's a female because of a lot of her coloring, but she has a spot in the middle of her throat, like one of the ones we mentioned earlier. Here's some more, and the one on the right, I'm wondering if it's a rufous female hummingbird, because it's got sort of orangey brown a little bit on the breast and the side. And that's, again, it's just a clue, like being a detective trying to figure out, who am I seeing here? So we've got food, water, shelter, that's great. And now you need to make sure that how you garden, how you look after your space is done in a safe, friendly way. So avoiding pesticides is key. There are other things you can do which are really great. I'm not going to get into in detail today, but you can make and use compost. You can conserve water. You can do green lawn care, which means you're not watering your lawn excessively and you're letting the grass clippings lie so they can decompose back into the earth as nutrients. You can mulch some garden beds perhaps. But avoiding pesticides, people say, oh gosh, how can I go organically? But people have been doing it organically for centuries, so we can do it again. It's just a matter of having a diversity of plants so that you don't have one kind of plant that insect pests, potential pests, can come and eat. You have a variety to can confuse them. Support plants with compost, because it's kind of like a multivitamin for plants, and it's natural. It's so nutritious. Really, it's what they're meant to have. And plant them in a suitable spot, because if you have a plant that needs sun and moist earth, if you plant it there, then chances are it can thrive. If you plant it somewhere where it gets lots of shade, well, it might survive, but it may be stressed as well, and that's more susceptible to having insects come. So if you don't want to use pesticides, then you want to make sure that the plants are strong and healthy, and you also want to attract your helpers. So birds and bats and toads and snakes and beneficial insects can come and, again, keep the balance in your garden. Have this biodiversity and have the balance by keeping things in check. And if you do want to spray something, maybe you can do something gentle like a spray of water. Maybe you've got some environmentally friendly dish soap that you can use to dilute in water and you can spray on a plant. There are different things you can try. So we can do it. We can make the world a safe environment for us and our wildlife. And speaking of sort of helping our gardens be safe, I don't know if you realize how many birds every year die because they're hitting glass, whether it's skyscrapers, apartment buildings, or our homes and cottages. And even though birds will often fly off, it's been shown that a lot of these times the trauma is there and the bird may not survive. So we used to put sort of markers on our windows to stop them from crashing into the windows. And again, why do they crash into windows? It's because it's reflecting what's around it. So if they see a tree reflected in the glass, they won't know it's a reflection. They'll think it's a tree that they can fly right through. But we've discovered that the best thing that could really stop birds from wanting to fly into our windows is having enough markers together, close enough together that the bird, even a small chickadee, thinks it cannot navigate between the dots or the lines, in which case it won't even try. And it has to be on the outside. There are different things one can discover if you're interested. So just something to keep in mind. I guess that's it. I've come to the end. So I hope you have enjoyed that. And if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer.
Amazing. Well, Sarah, that was some of the most concrete advice we've had in a broadcast in ages. So I hope our classrooms and families at home take away a lot of cool things to put in their own gardens and put in their own homes and help our bird friends, hummingbirds and other birds alike. And before we dive in with our Q&A, we are going to have a little Kahoot together. So the astute among you will notice that it's a different pin than I announced at the beginning. And that is because I accidentally pressed X and killed the Kahoot on my side. So it's a new one up. We're going to dive in with 4 quick questions. And Sarah, if you want to help us out with any of these answers, what classes win for winning this Kahoot is our everlasting respect. So if you want to give us little hints along the way, by all means, give us a hand. But we're going to get underway with this. And then Miss Baydani's class, Miss Fisher's class, we're coming to you. Our YouTubers already have a bunch of questions in, which is awesome. So let's get to it and get underway with our Kahoot. All right. Faster you answer, the more points you get. And also, we're going to share all sorts of great resources from the Canadian Wildlife Federation at the end of the broadcast as well to keep the learning going. So stay tuned for those. Yes, like our pollinators behind Sarah. All right. We talked about them eating quite a few things, but their favorite food, what we think of when we think of hummingbirds, is coming up here. Is it insects? Is it nectar? Is it fungi? Or is it other birds? The hummingbird's gone rogue. I don't think it's that, perhaps. But let's see what our answer is. I love seeing hummingbirds in my gardens, one of the great joys in life. And we planted quite a few flowers back when I used to live in Toronto and had hummingbirds galore. So nectar is our correct answer, even though, as we did highlight, they do get a lot of insects in our nesting season. So Super Dolphin has our lead there. All right, let's go to question 2 together. You need that sugar water, high energy. All right, some hummingbirds are smaller than moths. True or false? Sarah, we didn't cover this too much, but I love this question. One thing that I was gobsmacked at was the weight of something like a tiny hummingbird is like 2 grams, which is about 2 Skittles. So if you have 2 Skittles or 2 M&Ms, that's what a hummingbird weighs. They're so light. And yes, some moths dwarf hummingbirds. They make them look so tiny in comparison. You guys are on the ball. This is great. All right. Super Dolphin keeps our lead. 2 more questions together. Sarah, hummingbirds' wings beat how many times a minute? You talked about them being very fast, sounding like a whir. I love this stat. So it's 10, 100, 250, or can be several thousand beats per minute. If it was 10 a minute, that's like 1 every 6 seconds. That wouldn't sound like a really big whir, would it? So I saw anywhere from 540 to 5,000, which is crazy, like an unbelievable range for them, but also speed. So a lot of you got this right. Way to go. It is tricky. All right. Witty Giraffe takes our lead. And our final question for all the marbles as we go into our Q&A in a second. Hummingbirds drink what amount of their body weight in nectar each day? Is it a fifth? Is it a half? Is it as much as their whole body weight, or can be twice their body weight? Imagine if I'm 170 pounds. Imagine if I ate 170 pounds or 340 pounds of food every day. I would have such a stomach ache. It would be the worst. But hummingbirds, can drink twice their body weight in nectar a day, which is unbelievable. They're so high energy. They need that much energy to keep them going. Super Dolphin's third. Sarah, and we're going to Miss Baydani's class first. So get ready for Q&A. Daring Owl is second. Maybe it's going to be a hummingbird name as our winner. That's always fun when that happens. All right, our winner, Witty Giraffe. Way to go, guys. And thank you for playing along with that, especially if it's your first. Miss Baydani's class, we're going to head to you guys. If you want to unmute your mic and come on up for our first question, you are going to be good to go. Since you're walking away from the mic, I'm going to head to Mrs. Fisher's class first. Carsonville, come on in and take us for our first question. Hi.
How high can the hummingbirds fly?
Ooh, good question.
That's a very good question. I don't actually know the answer to that. And I'd love to know that, because a lot of people live in apartments and have balconies and are planting for all kinds of wildlife, the birds and the bees. Then it's nice for them to know, if I can plant on the 10th floor, the 13th floor, will they come? They can fly fairly high. I just don't know exactly how high, but that's such a good question. I'm going to go look it up myself and figure that out.
We stumped the scientists to start. I love when students do this. So Mrs. Fisher's class, way to go, guys. And so interesting that your mind went to take that to people planting it on an apartment building side. That's such a nice thing. And again, it speaks to the fact that pretty much wherever we are joining from today, you can help foster an environment that hummingbirds will come and visit. And I think that's so special. It's not true for lions and tigers and bears, oh my, but hummingbirds we can all bring close to us. So there you go. Great question, guys. All right. So many from our YouTube chat. So we're going to head to that first. And then Miss Baydani, we're coming to you in a second. Miss Minette's class, they're joining in Guelph. When are hummingbirds in Southern Ontario? Is there a time of year that we should look for them particularly, or no?
Yeah, so obviously in the spring, it depends on the weather we're getting, and because they are sort of like, adapting with the weather. But I start seeing them sort of around May. I can't remember if it's sort of like mid-May, end of May, but I will definitely see them around May time.
Fantastic. I remember, yeah, late spring, summer when I was doing it. Sarah knows is an
Mm.
expert, of course, but go out and look all the time. Maybe not mid.
Keep watching, because again, I'm not in southern Ontario. I'm sort of like southeastern Ontario. So again, depending on where we live, the ecosystems are that much different. It's just great to keep observing and discovering for yourself. And yeah,
I was going to say iNaturalist is a great tool for this because if you type in a hummingbird
yes.
species into iNaturalist, you can see when all the observations were made. So you can literally type in like ruby-throated hummingbird and Guelph, and it will tell you like what months those observations were made. It's really, really fun tool.
It's great. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because you guys can all help with iNaturalist. iNaturalist is a place for what we call citizen scientists. So you can help scientists with your observations. If you're out taking pictures with something, whether it's a plant or an animal, you can post it on iNaturalist. And there are scientists that are checking to see, are the populations of this plant or animal getting bigger, smaller? Is it in an area we've never seen before? So you can help too. You can learn lots of stuff online, have your pictures identified, but you can also get lots of information too. So thank you for bringing that up.
It's my favorite tool ever. We use it every year. It's so much fun. I can't encourage our classes enough. We're going to head out west to Alberta. Miss Baydani's class, come on in and take us away with a question. Hey. Hi.
What months does hummingbird come in?
To Alberta. Okay. Do we know that, Sarah?
I know it's so hard to know exactly across the country. This is where it's great to talk to your local field naturalist club, your local natural history museum. There are lots of nature groups online that are sharing this information. And as Jessie said, iNaturalist is terrific. So typically spring. It depends on which part of the country, whether it's early, mid, or late spring, typically. And then they start leaving by the end of the summer, and some will stick around, into the fall. Again, it just depends on the year and what the weather we're having that year is like. It depends on the species, and it depends on where you are in the country. So those are typically your range, but then for specifics, you're going to have to pay attention for that year and ask your local experts for that.
I looked up where your class is, and the quickest thing the internet can give me is mid-May through mid-September is your hummingbird season there. So about a month and a bit or so, and you can start looking for them in your backyard. That's very cool. All right. Let's see from YouTube, and then we're going to head back to Mrs. Fisher's class in a second. A whole bunch more rounds with everybody. Let's see. How big do hummingbirds get? Is there a biggest hummingbird in the world?
In the world, I don't know. I mean, in Canada, they're only a few inches. They're not that big, and even when their wings are spread, they're never terribly big. But as far as the biggest in the world, I really don't know how big they get in the world.
That's good. That's a good start for our audience. And so a question that's either really easy or really hard, no pressure. Do you have a favorite hummingbird? What's the best hummingbird, Sarah?
Oh, I don't have favorites. I think they're all beautiful. They're all smart. They're all lovely. And I'm so glad that they're all our neighbors in this country. So thank you for the question. That's a cool question, but I don't know them all.
I will say most biologists that we ever feature do not have a favorite animal. It's very hard. It'd be like asking an artist what their favorite color was. It's kind of tricky, but good question, guys. Yeah. All right, back to Carsonville, Mrs. Fisher's class. Come on in and take us away with another question.
Is there any hummingbirds you haven't discovered yet?
Ooh.
What a great question. These are all such super questions. And the answer, I guess, is we don't know if we haven't discovered it yet. People have been in so many places around the world. You'd think we would have discovered most species by now, but funnily enough, we're still discovering more species of all different kinds of creatures, plants and animals alike. So because they're kind of tiny and they blend in, maybe there is one. I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe you can grow up to be the kind of person to figure that kind of stuff out.
I love this question, and I will say that we do this in a lot of our programs. Every single time scientists go to like the Central American or South American rainforest, we find new species. So the likelihood is probably yes. We don't know for sure, but certainly insects. Every time we go looking, we find new insects. Every time we really go looking, we usually find new amphibians and mammals and birds as well. So a lot of species to be found. We know we've charted about 2 million species on Earth, and we think there could be up to 30 million species on Earth. So I love it when we get this query. That's awesome, guys. All right, back to Alberta. Miss Baydani's class, come on in. Take us away. Hey.
How much do baby hummingbirds weigh?
Ooh.
Oh my gosh, it's such a good question, but not much at all because they're so tiny. They're such tiny little creatures. And of course, they get bigger in the nest before they actually fledge the nest and leave and follow the parent around for a bit. But oh my gosh, I don't actually have an actual number of measurement for that. But they're so tiny, so incredibly light. I mean,
Yeah, 2 Skittles, as we said, for an adult hummingbird. So
yeah.
just imagine a baby. They're so cute. I encourage you to look up baby hummingbirds when you're done this broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
We had a really cool question about where hummingbirds are located, again, on a global scale. So we have them here in Canada. We have them here in the United States, where some of our friends are. Are they worldwide? Are there hummingbirds in Asia, Australia, Africa, or are there different birds that are kind of like them?
That's a good question. I mean, I haven't studied worldwide populations of hummingbirds, so I don't know. But I do know there are other hummingbirds in the world, in other places for sure. But at least I believe there are. That's a good
Yes.
question. Never make an assumption in life. I've learned never make an assumption. I thought I had read that somewhere, but I can't say for sure, so I gotta be very careful. But I do know they travel from Canada through the States down to Central America and even the north of South America. So our American area, the continents, are covered. As far as other parts of the world, I thought there were.
So we have some things that
Do
are
not?
like them. So no, so hummingbirds are entirely North and South America, and then
Okay,
the
thank
birds that are
you.
kind of like them in Asia and Africa are called sunbirds. So they fill a lot of the same
Yes, that's
roles.
it.
Yeah, so
Thank
you'll
you.
find that distribution is pretty common in the world. Like we have pythons in one area of the world and boas in another area, or crocodiles and alligators, or things that are just separate across the Atlantic Ocean. And so, like cacti are like a North American thing, and in Asia and Africa, it's like euphorbs, which are like look like cacti. You'd think they were a cactus, but they're a little bit different. Same with sunbirds and hummingbirds. That's a very, very cool question. Thanks, guys.
That's a very good answer too. That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. So many questions. Oh, how fast can hummingbirds go? Do we have are we like radar gunning them when they're flying out there?
Yeah, and when I was researching, I found incredible speeds. I didn't note them down though. They're really, really fast. Because again, when I'm standing still and they're going past, like it's just extremely fast. I don't know how fast that is in a measurement, but it's extremely fast.
So UC Davis, who's been one of my guides for a few of the questions earlier on, mentioned 33 miles per hour, so about 50 something kilometers an hour. So very like unbelievably fast for little birds about their size, which is really, really cool. Quick one from YouTube, and then we're going to do one more round with our live classes. You've talked about this, but we'll reiterate it again. Do hummingbirds migrate?
They do. They do. So to different degrees, to different lengths. A lot of our hummingbirds do travel quite far to the south, but I think there's one species in BC that doesn't travel very far when it migrates, and I forget which one that is, but for the most part, a lot of them do travel quite far. When we were looking at the maps, we saw color from like Canada right through America down to Central and sometimes South America, but yeah, just depends on the species.
It does indeed. And I think, again, highlight in your minds that it's a bird this big and how far it has to travel comparatively. Like when we go for a walk, the hummingbird to cover that distance is a lot longer because he's a lot tinier. So they're quite incredible migrations in the animal kingdom. That
Yes, and when you think about that, they need a lot of fuel for that migration. Like when you fill up your car with gas, we use it for food. Food is our fuel. And so when we are in our gardens and our spaces where there was always habitat before, and now there really is a lot of concrete and just barren lawns, please, if you can add something in your home, in your schoolyard, work with a local community group to get more native plants in these spaces so that we have wonderful stopping spots, way stations, fueling stations for these hummingbirds when they're just living naturally, and then when they're migrating or getting ready to migrate. So really important way we can help them.
Fantastic, Sarah. Such, again, concrete advice. It's so fun. We're going to take 3 more questions before we wrap up as time flies and you're having fun. So, Mrs. Fisher, we're coming to you first, Miss Baydani, and then we're going to take 1 more from you two before we say goodbye. Hey, Carson.
Well, I was wondering, like, because I had hummingbirds before.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was wondering, like, are hummingbirds nice? Because I used to have some in my smoke room on the light bulb. We had
Cool.
there though.
Are they nice, Sarah? What's the deal?
Well, again, what is nice? I think one could say yes, because they're just going about their business. Depends how you define nice. Hummingbirds, like other birds and other animals, sometimes they can be territorial, telling the other bird, wait a minute, this is my spot. This is where I'm going to have my nest and where I'm living. And so they might be a little bit aggressive with another animal, just warning them off, saying this is my space. So hummingbirds can be a little bit like that, like a lot of other birds and animals can be, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're not nice. It's just they're just doing what they've evolved to do in terms of how they live. Yeah. So I think all animals are nice, really, to be honest. But
I love the nuance there, so thank you very much for that. All right, back to Alberta one last time. Miss Baydani's class, take us away.
How much pollen do hummingbirds collect?
Ooh, do they collect pollen, Sarah, and how much?
Okay, so that's a really great question. They don't collect pollen on purpose because they're going to the flower to feed from the nectar, from the flower. They get pollen on them by accident, kind of as they're sort of in the area of the flower. So I don't know how much pollen they do collect. They're not Canada's top pollinator. We have 7 kinds of pollinators in Canada. We have bees and wasps, flies. Flies are big ones, bees are big ones, butterflies, moths, beetles, and hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are sort of on the lower end in terms of how efficient they are. So I don't think they get tons of pollen on them as much as, say, bees and flies in Canada, but they do get some. So I can't say how much exactly, but they do get a little bit on them, enough to be considered a pollinator.
Yeah, what a great question, guys. You guys are an amazing audience today. All right, Miss Goddard's class, to wrap us up, they had a question about how did you get interested in hummingbirds? What's your story? What's the deal?
Me? Oh my gosh. Well, I love all nature. I just really enjoy nature, and I love discovering about what's around me and how I can help them. And I'm so grateful that I have seen hummingbirds in my life, and they do come to my garden. My garden is filled with all kinds of habitat for them. So I'm very grateful that I do get to see them and hear them once in a while. So yeah, that's me.
I love the nature love of you and our whole Canadian Wildlife Federation series. I really encourage our classes. If you want to meet 2 other amazing people that love the natural world and all the life in it, check them out in the next couple of days. We've got monarchs tomorrow and then whales to wrap up on Friday. Sarah, thank you so much for your passion, your expertise, all of this. It's been so fun having you. And so I'm going to do what we do to wrap up every broadcast. I'm going to bring in Mrs. Fisher's class, Miss Baydani's class. If you're at home on YouTube and you want to scream and yell and annoy the principal as we say farewell, please do. You have but come on in Alberta and Michigan. Thank you so much, guys, and have a wonderful rest of your day.